On the chat. We're in the show, boys.
We're live. Thank goodness. Hello, good morning to everyone and welcome to Acsom Charity Weekender. I'm David and I'll be your host for the next hour. And I'm coming to you live from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And I'm joined by three Palamines. Dano will come and explain Palamine to you in a minute. Three Palamines from a Celtic world, the YouTube channel connecting Celtic fans all over the world. From Kuala Lumpur to Kirkintilloch, from Singapore to Stirling, from Girvan to Gwangju, Cardiff to Chicago, and we go live on Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 at Malaysia time, which I think is 10:30 Glasgow time. First of all, thank you to Paul John, the Acsom team, for inviting us on to do this. It's a real privilege to be here, and I know when the message came through, there was probably a few more of us and some dogs apparently as well who would love to come on and support Jamie Tierney. For those of you who don't know, there's a link in there in the GoFundMe. The story's there as well if you want to go and do that. We know it's a difficult time of the year. It's an expensive time for the year. If you can afford a couple of quid to support that, please do. But if not, thank you for coming in and just watching. That's a great support in itself. And if you can, maybe just send this on, send the links on. That will get to somebody who can. So thank you very much. Okay, so I'm gonna, before we start and get into all of this, I'm going to come round and let everybody introduce themselves. Jerry, I'll come to you first. Where are you?
I'm in Singapore, and apologies, that is my dog that is in the background. So apologies. He's a puppy. In his defence, he wants to be on the show as well. His name is Henke Larsson Sellers, so the dog is named after Henrik Larsson. So I think he just saw me with my hoops on, got too excited, so he's wanting to jump on.
He thought he was going to.
He thought he was getting a part of the show. So
was he? I thought you'd captured Gav and stolen him and all that. I mean, it was Gav in the background. You never know when it's Gav barking. And we'll come back and we'll talk about that in a minute.
So
okay,
in Singapore, and thanks again, Paul. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you, Dano. Tell us where you are. You sound like you're in the US. Is that correct, Dano?
No, I'm still in Gwangju. I'm headed back to Sweet Home Chicago on Wednesday. Gwangju, for anybody who doesn't know, is the birthplace of Korean democracy. Look up May 18th in Gwangju if you've never studied the history, but an amazing place to be. I host a music show every single night here on GFN, which is the English radio station here. So, playing a lot of diverse music, which is not very apparent on the airwaves here in Korea generally. I mean, K-pop is totally dominant. In fact, there are like government rules about how much K-pop you have to play on most shows, and I'm one of the few that doesn't have to. So it's a dream gig, man. And the City of Light, Gwangju, amazing place.
I thought all of that stuff you've got in front of you looked far too professional for us, so it must have been for something else, right?
Yeah, well, I'm basically living in the studio. I've got about 38 hours of quality programming to make before Wednesday. So I've just been slamming out programs for the past 48 hours.
You couldn't have done that before you came on, mate. Giving us a help.
I've been here all day. I mean, matter of fact, I ran home just for like the microphone and some of the stuff I usually use for this. It's been manic, man. It's been absolutely manic. And actually, yeah, I mean, Jerry, that's usually my dog that's barking during the programming. So it's kind of a relief not to have X-Man screaming in the background for once,
Delighted to have you here, Dana. I know you're heading off you've got a busy time because you're heading to Chicago on Wednesday. So thank you very much. But I know you really wanted to come on. So great.
Oh, yeah,
Ian, absolutely. How are you?
Yeah, Croeso Gymru, welcome to Wales. It's a bit of Welsh for you there, so just getting it in. I'm as good as can be at 9:10 on after that yesterday. But no, all good, thank you. I'm trying to think you made the joke, David, about trying to avoid actually talking about the game, so I'm just trying to not bring it down early doors.
So I'm going to 100%. I'm going to 100% do that for the next 10 minutes, and I'm taking advantage that the Acsom viewers may not know who we are and why we're here, etc. Why we've been even invited. But I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back to Jerry. So Jerry, for those of you who may not have seen our show, it's kind of an irreverent, get together of Celtic fans in various locations around the world. We do kind of look to try and connect a lot of the CSCs. We had the Celtic Bars book on. We coverage of books and material from those who produce them are in the Celtic world. So we have them on talking about the CSCs. It's a great learning platform. It connects us, and Paul John again doing a great job of bringing us all together as well. Gav is usually the person who would be in this hot seat here, but he's on holiday. Now, he is in Malaysia like me, but he's in a place called Sabah, which is on the island of Borneo. And in his holidays, he decided to go down to see Jerry. So,
trouble.
So Jerry, tell us what happened yesterday in Singapore and Gav's arrival there.
Gav probably couldn't have picked a worse day to come to Singapore to meet us, to be honest, because we had a Christmas event, a Christmas celebration, a Christmas party yesterday, which kicked off about 5 p.m. And we had about 35 people there from the Singapore Celtic Supporters Club. We're called the Sing Tims. In our pub, Murray Murphy's, some of the people that are listening might well have been there. We had 2 or 3 visitors last night. We got a lot of visitors into Singapore. Fairly large transit hub, obviously, and we welcome them as well as we can. And we welcomed them very well last night, the ones that were there, that's for sure. So including Gav, who rocked up. He rocked up about 12 pints in for me, I think, yesterday. So maybe not 12. It was probably 6 and 2 bottles of wine, I guess, at the time Gav turned up. So and the funny thing is, having done this podcast with you guys several times now, and I guess in the COVID world that we lived in, your perception of humans when you're talking to them in this kind of forum is very different from when you meet them in real life, right? So I met Gav and went, oh, geez, he's a much larger human than I thought he was. He's quite a tall human being. I mean, I don't mean he's a fat bastard, but he's a big man. And I was like, hey, you're a big man, you're a boxer. And he said to me, he says, oh, so are you? And I said, he says, you're the first person I've met from a Celtic world in person. He said, in fact, this is the first time that any of us have met. Paul and I were going to meet in Sydney one time, but I was written off again that day, so started early with my son in Sydney. But yeah, and he said, doing these things, I had a perception that you were a small guy and David was a big guy, and I was like, no, completely the opposite way about.
I'm a short ass. I'm 5'8". Yeah. That's it.
Yeah. So anyway, we had
I just project myself. I project myself well.
We had a great day. We had a great day with 90 minutes or 100 minutes of crap thrown in at the end. So just to round the day off. But great day, great to meet Gab. Obviously, you got to meet some of the members of the supporters club. Did some video, so we'll get that I think on a future podcast, which will be good. Got some video of us singing some songs and having a general having a party as a celebration of all things Celtic for Christmas. So yeah, it's good to do. And this is the first year we've been in this pub, so they looked after us wonderfully well. So.
And I know you guys do a lot of the work for Foundation, etc. So I'm sure you'd be delighted to be on to do this for wee Jamie Tierney as well. We'll get the word out as much as we can as well, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Hail, Jamie.
Hail, Jamie. Now, Jerry, I'm not sure how much of the game you saw yesterday.
The free kick was never a free kick. And it was definitely going to be a goal from the minute the free kick was given. That's about as much as it was. It wasn't. I mean, let's just say that we'd had a wonderful night up until then, and that put a dampener on it until we got to the 90th minute. Then we partied again, or the 95th minute, or whatever it was, and then we partied again. But wasn't. I'm sure this was done yesterday ad nauseum, and I'm sure it's going to be done for the rest of the day on this podcast. But I'm just glad that I was in such a poor state that I didn't. I'm not the person to be asking about that game. I was, but generally, just I'm not. I think it's. I've seen and I've read some stuff today. People talking about back to that's like the COVID season, right? It was just abject. It was just absolutely. I mean, we were terrible against Kilmarnock the other week, and we seem to get worse. Just no imagination, no invention, questionable team selection, questionable substitutions, in my opinion, and just no fight. I think more than anything else, just no imagination and no fight. So it was, even. It almost sobered me up actually watching the first half. So I had to work hard at this in the break to make sure that I sustained a level of inebriation so I could watch the second half.
I think you made the right call, because I watched it sober at home, starting at 11 o'clock in Kuala Lumpur time, and I forced myself through it. So for those of you who don't know, I run the Kuala Lumpur Celtic Supporters Club, and we're less popular in terms of a travel destination than Singapore is. That's just the facts. And we get a lot of people coming through Kuala Lumpur on their trips from Scotland, visiting family in Australia, New Zealand, and we get visitors coming in, and we're always delighted to be able to put the games on for them. But I felt last night I'll just watch it at home. There's no one around. None of the other CSE's guys were around, and it was a hard watch, Jerry. So I think you made the right decision. So I think I've been avoiding this, right, leading up to this point. But I think we're going to have no option but to actually start to talk about it. So Ian, let's start, because Ian, I think you had banned yourself from Twitter a week or two ago, but you were very much on it again after the game and for some time afterwards. Do you want to start us off with a general, and then we'll come in? Maybe I tell you what. Let's start with it. Let's do our usual. Let's start with the team. Let me read the team out. Let's hear it to ourselves again. Remind those who weren't quite available to know who came on the park last night. So it was Hart, Alistair Johnston, Carter Vickers, Scales, Taylor, McGregor, O'Reilly, and I think up until that point, I think we're okay, right? We're not worried too much. Then we go Turnbull, who's in and out of the team, and then we've got Mikey Johnston, who is Mikey Johnston. So we're not quite sure where Mikey Johnston sits in the Brendan Rodgers world. And then we've got Palmer, and then Kyogo's back in as well. And now let's just talk about the subs, because I think there's some frightening omissions from people who have turned up recently at European level. But we've got Bain, Corn, Bernabei, Bernardo, Maeda, Forrest, Ralston, and Welsh. Okay, Ian, over at you. Slide us in gently. Do a knee slide, even though Gav won't like it. Tell us.
Yeah,
actually, I just read a comment there which I think is worth mentioning just before Ian slides in, just saying, just a thought: could Gav's singing get rid of the board? I mean, there's a thought for you, right?
Let's fund them over. No, I think there were a lot of red flags for that team selection. I think I think the kind of glaring omissions for me were Brahim and Lagerbielke. I know there was the rumours about Lagerbielke being sold and things like that, but I think a lot of people had discussed how Taylor is a perpetual problem at left back. Should we move Scales to left back and then maybe bring in a guy who's come on, looked solid and scored a European winner? Or do we, for example, drop Mikey Johnson, who's done absolutely nothing, move Palmer over there and bring in Frame, who looked really lively and is obviously a bright prospect, and put him in front of Taylor? No, none of that. None of that. In fact, as a reward for their good performances, they get jettisoned from the squad. So that was great. Then, like you say, we saw Turnbull, and we thought, well, hold on, it seems to be working. The Cal McGregor's doing a little bit better further forward. So naturally, Brendan Rodgers thinks, well, let's put him back to where he wasn't performing and bring in Turnbull, who's not performed, who I've pretty much thrown under a bus, which he proceeds to do again by substituting him at half-time, instead of Bernardo, who I think I said on the podcast the other week, I said Bernardo is very beige. He is like a beige player. He doesn't do much wrong. He doesn't do much right. But what he does do is allow Callum McGregor to play further forward and be a bit more effective. So yeah, and I mean, Mikey Johnson, I said I'm not going to hammer the guy anymore. I mean, he's probably still got some defenders out there, and like all the best to them. But yeah, the writing was in the wall from the team selection, because I think systematically over maybe like the past 4 or 5 weeks, you've seen Rodgers criticise the squad, say that the players aren't good enough, that people need to be replaced. And if you're in a job and you've got a manager who's constantly blaming the team, saying that parts of the team need to be replaced, I don't care how good a footballer you are, or how good an employee you are, how disciplined you are, how much you're getting paid. If the boss doesn't rate you, or there's that air of confusion, you're not going to get performances out of people. And I, like I said, I've been pretty vocal about it. I think probably we're at the stage where the board need to say to themselves, do we change a manager or do we change 10 players? Because the only player that Rodgers hasn't really taken backwards is Matt O'Reilly. So therefore, he's got Matt O'Reilly as his starting base, Kyogo top scorers in the mud. So he needs 10 players. So that's the decision for the board. Does he get 10 players because that's what he needs, or does someone else come in and get a tune out this squad? I'm reluctant to say sack Rodgers, because I'm not quite sure we're there, but I can't shake the feeling that we're well on our way to having to do it.
So one of your tweets actually talked about that yesterday. You said that, this sort of immature response that you get when you go near any of these subjects, like get rid of, sack, someone will come at you and say, well, who then? Who needs it? Well, that's just not the response here. We have to be factual. We have to look at this. We're not scouters. We're not looking across the managerial employment pool across Europe and beyond for the next manager. We're dealing with what it's in front of us. And I think it's a reasonable response to start going there. And I felt after the 4-5 final, there was a kind of sea-changing approach from the fans that sort of leading up to this. It's taken a lot to get us here. I think we've been in defence of the board, of the manager, of the team in general. We've tried not to push any agendas of this is what it has to be. We've remained fairly neutral on the Green Brigade, positive, negatives there, etc. We've tried to do all of that, but I think we're at this point now where I think we just have to start talking in realistic terms. But Daniel, I want to ask you a point, not on, because he didn't play, Lagabuke, he didn't play last night, but he goes and he scores a goal, and everybody, is talking about how well he played. And the next thing you get is he's up for sale. What can happen there? What happens to a club and environment that's something that goes from literally scoring in Europe, keeping a reputation somewhat intact, and then the next thing you're up for sale? What's happened there?
I don't know. I mean, it would be shocking if they're actually shopping him around or something. But the guy who broke the story is a pretty reputable guy. Like, he's gotten stuff right in the past, a lot of big stuff. So I don't know what the hell's going on here. It is very disappointing to see him score a goal in Europe and then even have this rumor kind of knocking around. Not a good thing, not a good sign. And that's generally been what's been going on this week, is just not very good vibes coming from any level of management at the club, whether it's, the Green Brigade getting kicked out by the board for their Palestinian activism. And then from there, it seems to have just kind of snowballed, and I don't know, they just keep making the wrong steps in the dance routine.
Yeah. You've been talking about this for a while, Dano. The flip flop of Brendan Rodgers. We're not sure exactly where his mind's at. I'm confused by Brendan Rodgers now, but I think so we've kind of covered the team going into the game, the glaring omissions there. Let me go back to my notes because I was sober watching this game last night. So I had something about it was kind of. Let's talk about, Ian, the inevitability of this game. For the first 10 minutes, I wrote down there's no rhythm to this team. There doesn't seem to be a dynamism. There seems to be a kind of pass back and forth across the back before we do anything with it. And even when we have wingers who bring it up, the final touches are just so atrocious that we have to then spend the rest of the time getting the ball back. In the first 10 minutes, and I've noticed this when we've not been playing well and we've ended up having a loss, this second one, right? There's an inevitability to it. And I don't know if you had the same feeling. That first 10 minutes, it was like, here we go. This is
100%. I think we joked the other day that it's kind of like Samaras. Like, you knew exactly what sort of performance you were going to get out of him in the first 10 minutes, and this team is it, except without the spectacular highs that Samaras had. We talked, I think, a few games in to this season, and we said, right, well, what is Rodgers' style of play? What is he trying to do? Because we asked the question on here, and none of us kind of knew. We knew it's possession-based, and I think, cut to today, and we asked the same thing, and we say, well, what are the patterns of play? What are people trying to do? And I can't answer it. Like, I'm sure there's people out there that are really knowledgeable in terms of the tactics and stuff that might say there's like some really discrete things going on, but it seems to just be hold on to that ball and hope for moments of magic. Because after Motherwell, we had the shock. St. Johnstone, we got out of it with two spectacular goals, two spectacular individual goals. We discussed the other day about Feyenoord there. It was a great result, but we could easily have lost that given the chances we gave away. And it's not been good for weeks. So, yeah, that first 10 minutes, you were like, right. I'm reluctant to say there's players that are kind of passengers or not trying, but I go back to the fact that the manager has said lots of these players are not good enough. We need players to come in to make a difference. So you are sending that team out there saying, right, half the people here are not good enough. If any of them are on social media, they know who's not good enough. And first 10 minutes, I mean, it was clear. It was clear that, and we said the same thing we always say, we're going to need 2 goals at least to get anything out of this. And, that, prove to be true. We needed 3 if we wanted to win, but we never even looked like getting 1, to be honest with you.
Jerry, I remember talking to you some shows ago about, it was fairly early on in our first season in a Celtic world, and we were talking about trying to sort of see we had a lot of injuries, we suffered from a lot of injuries, with new players coming in, and you were very much of the view that I haven't seen people play enough games. I haven't seen enough from the manager yet. I can't determine whether or not he had been involved in this selection process. Now, that was probably, I think, about 6 or 8 weeks ago, at least, when we had that conversation on the show. Where are you now? Are you seeing a malaise throughout the team? There's something structurally wrong in where we are at the moment.
Yeah, good question. And I was talking to a couple of people about this last night, and talking about the transfer window, right? In terms of the transfer window, we've talked about this before as well. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, it must be the worst transfer window that we've done, and as long as I can remember, signed 10 players or something, and there's only one that you would keep now at this point. In terms of what we've seen so far, would be Palmer. Is the only one that's been given a chance of all the players that were signed under Brendan's tenure to date. Excuse me. Most of them he's just not playing. So why did we sign him in the first place? So that's my first question, I guess, on that, or my first comment on that, David. Secondly, I think some of the players that we knew were pish are still pish. So some of the areas that we knew we needed to go, and I mean, I know I was on one of these at the beginning of the season, and I said I wouldn't mind giving Big Scales a run at left back because he can't be worse than Taylor is, right? And And I think people laughed at me at the time because he hadn't kicked a ball for Celtic at that. And if there's been any, maybe the two players that have been demonstrably better under Rodgers are Liam Scales, because he's been given a run. Whether he's a better player or not under Rodgers is another question. Is a different question. And Matt O'Reilly is the only one. So yeah, I mean, in terms of, I haven't seen any progression in the players we hoped we'd see progression from. I think they're confused in general with what they're trying to do. Bring back Ange Ball. I was all for hell for leather. Let's go for it. I mean, hell for leather. Let's go for it, and let's just attack, rather than the pedestrian stuff. I think and looking at looking at Celtic play, maybe not. I wasn't maybe looking at it as objectively last night as I was the week before, where I hadn't been drinking for 6 hours in advance of the game, but it's just dire. It's Brendan's second season again. It's just dire. We're not. There doesn't seem to be. I mean, we seem to be so pedestrian, trying to lack of invention, lack of a killing touch. Let's just keep 90% possession and do nothing with it, and very liable to have done to us what Kilmarnock did to us and what Hearts have done to us. And I mean, I don't know.
I think that's the thing as well. By the way, I think like you're saying, what Hearts and Kilmarnock and Motherwell have done to us. The problem we have now is teams have a variety of ways to get us. With Ange, all they did was try that low block to try and stifle us and stop us. They can try that against us and still get a result to the win in set pieces. They can have a go at us like Kilmarnock did. And when it seems as if now, that kind of aura that we had under Ange, where teams used to fear coming to Celtic Park and playing Celtic, I bet you now any team that's coming up against us does not hold anywhere near the same fear. That has completely been eroded and is going to take a while to build back up.
No, I've got a good mate. I've got 4 tickets, David, as you know, at Celtic, and I gave them to the same mate. He's an old schoolmate of mine. He went to the Feyenoord game and he was sending me photographs, thanking me after it. I haven't heard from him after the Hearts game, so he's maybe not talking to me.
Well, that's an app, and we're going to come on to, and maybe we need to talk. Well, let me actually, just before, I'm going to thank PJ 1888 because he did a post here. You maybe have come across it. Celtic summer signings: Yang not in squad, Telio not in squad, Phillips not in squad, Naroki not in squad, Lagerbielke not in squad, Holm not in squad, Iowata injured, Bernardo bench, Quan bench, first time since September. Palmer starts. That's not healthy reading, is it?
That's what I said. That's what I said without the detail. It's horrific. It's horrific. What how much? I don't know how much money we spent. It's not a small amount of money. We spent 8 million quid or something on the central defenders.
Sorry, I got to ask, right? See if those players had come under Ange. And I know, like we've said multiple times, you don't want to hark back to Ange, but if we had a manager the quality of Ange. Now, bear in mind, Rodgers came in and said, I will work with the players that I've got, which, I know Rodgers, you can pick out things that he said that are completely false and contradictory. But if Ange had those players, I guarantee you they'd all know the system. They'd all come in and have at least a minimum level of performance. I'm not saying that he'd have been turning them into world beaters. I'm not saying we'd have won every game comfortably, but at least we'd be going in there knowing what we were getting from everyone and knowing who actually rated or not. Like Ideguchi and some others just went because they weren't good enough. But it just seems like a lot of them have been written off and not even being tried to be developed or fit into the non-existent system.
And interestingly, that's an interesting point, Ian, because on that point, right, Brendan Rodgers is a much more hands-on coach than Ange is, right? Ange is much more of a strategist and let the coaching team do the coaching. So, and the coaching team's the same as it was ostensibly last season, right? So there's only one person on that coaching team that's really changed. So, ostensibly you've got the same players, with outside of Starfelt and Jota, it's the same team with the extra fat that we've got in that team now. So if that is the case, then the only thing that's really changed in the coaching staff is Brendan being hands-on.
It's an amazing difference in terms, because I remember Matt O'Reilly's, particularly when he was talking with Turnbull. Turnbull got his start. We thought Turnbull was coming good. We thought, and Matt O'Reilly had made the point about the manager turning up for training, and it was almost like a dig at Ange. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And he was saying, you deserve it, you know, to Turnbull as well, got a man of the match, and he said the same thing. You turn up for training, it's about time you get your chance, etc. It seems that we're a long way from that point of initial honeymoon period with Brendan coming in. Let's talk about Kyogo for a minute, if you don't mind. So, in particular, Kyogo seems to have lost his touch, in my perspective. So, what I mean by this is people are saying he's not getting service anymore. So the way in which we were playing, the way we were lining up, he wasn't getting service. But I've watched him over the last couple of games, 2 or 3 games now, and every time he receives the ball, it's almost like he's just gone off the boil and he puts it over the bar, inevitably. That's what it feels like. The stats will tell me differently, but it feels like he's not on target, puts it over the bar. What's happened? Is it that you've taken him out of, he can only receive it from wide positions now, and therefore, instead of being part of the build-up play, because we talked about he needs to be part of the build-up play, he needs to play a different role than just sitting in and then appearing from, you know, in front of the defenders, etc. But it seems startling to me, Dano, that someone of his capability has regressed so much in his finishing. When he's receiving the ball, and he did it again yesterday. When he receives the ball, it's up or wide. What happens? What's happened here? Do you think it's a player mentality thing, or are we back to what the guys have been saying? Something under Brendan Rodgers' approach to training and how he comes out in the media has changed it all for us.
I think he's having a rough patch. You know, I mean, players go through this. It's just so noticeable when strikers have it, right? But the one thing I notice about Brendan versus Ange is the movement off the ball. I mean, when Ange had them going, you know, especially last year, the movement was incredible, and especially Kyogo. And there's kind of a lot of waiting and standing around, and everybody just kind of, they don't know what's going to happen next. And it just seems like the players are just kind of standing around with their nuts in their hands a lot of time, like not really knowing what to do or where to go or how to create space. So, yeah, I don't know, but it's a mess. I think it's definitely more to how the team is just working in link-up play. I mean, they're clearly not on the same page at all, and I think was suffering huge from that. But yeah, the wingers, the service from the wingers has been bad. The injuries have been bad. Like, I don't discount that. I still want to give Raj a chance. I mean, we're missing Abada, we're missing all these people still, and it's like, I don't know. I'm still willing to have some patience, but another loss domestically, and I'm going to kind of be lost on that train too. But that's the thing I noticed when we have the ball, the lack of movement, man. It was so dynamic under Ange, and it just seems to be stale as fuck, man. Bad.
The thing you got to remember about Kyogo now as well is Kyogo got dropped. Like, Kyogo get dropped for, now some might say quite rightly, because he's not. The difference with previous managers is that they would say, well, look, still getting to the chances, just needs a couple of goals, and it will change because we're creating the chances, and then that's when you need to worry.
Right.
You know, we need to worry when he's missing 2 or 3 and getting into position, but at the moment he's missing 1, or he's trying to get to 1, and so we're not. There is an issue because we're not getting chances, and that's what we always say. I'd be worried if we weren't making chances. We are not making. Well, we're not making a good quality of chance consistently. We're not looking like we can break teams down consistently. Like I've said before, we're looking for individual moments of brilliance and relying on those, and those really do not come along often.
Right. It's just not consistent currency, you know? I mean, it's just, if you're relying on brilliance, you're supposed to be relying on the system, and then the brilliance augments that.
Yeah.
No, where's the system right now? Where's the movement?
I was just going to say, even the first 6 games of last season under Ange, Ange's first season, where we didn't do wonderfully well in those first 6 games, but the amount of opportunities we created was extraordinarily high. Right, the amount of efforts that we were having on goal was extraordinarily high. So you could see that we were trying to do something. You could see that he was working with a skeleton crew at that point in time, right? But you could see what you could have. I think all of us were going, this guy's got something. We can see what he's trying to do here. Right now, it's I don't want to get overly depressed about it, but it's we need to make some
Jerry,
changes in the
talking about depression. Do you think things have, when things have gone when Santa gets booed at halftime? Is that the moment where we know? Is that the moment that we know?
I might have been booing him myself. I don't know. I can't quite remember half time, but I guess at least there's a bit of hilarity to be had there, right? It's I'm sure Santa being booed at halftime, if Santa was indeed there, didn't have to have security round about him to make sure that no one lamped him. Unlike the board,
Santa's another Lowell shill. He's a board plant. Santa.
It's never a good. It's never a good time. It's never a good sign for any sports franchise to have Philadelphia visit you. I mean, you got fisticuffs in the stands. They're booing Santa. That's bad, man. Philly at Celtic Park, not good. Bad vibes.
I'm definitely never going to wear red when I go back to Celtic Park again, just in the off chance. You know what I'm saying, fellas? I don't want to take any chances. Right, fellas, I'm going to just pause for a wee second and remind us all why we're here. First of all, to say, Paul, John, the Acsom team, thank you very much once again for inviting us on to come on and talk to everybody today. But above all of this nonsense that we're talking about, the most important things, Jamie, please, there's a link you'll see scrolling along. It's in the YouTube link. We all know, difficult time of the year. If you're unable to put in a couple of quid, that's fine, understood. But maybe if you could just share it around, let people know, and just sincere thanks for coming in and commenting and watching. There's lots more shows lined up today as well, so stick with the Acsom team. Let's go on to the second half. Now, changes were made, Ian, and I perceived a change in the tempo, right? So I was kind of thinking, right, okay, maybe what's just happened is that, and I had a suspicion that in my head, Brendan had kind of stuck two fingers up at the board and said, I'm playing these guys. You're going to have to deal with this type stuff. And I have suspicion going on in my head around that. Conspiracy theorists, maybe. But, however, changes were made, and I saw a change in tempo in the second half. Agree? Or do you think it was just too much, too late, silly, wrong people?
Way too late. I think if Rodgers is trying to make a point, he's more daft than, he's more deluded than ever, because there's no point he can make with playing these different players, because everyone, I think most people appreciate the board are kind of not fit for purpose, and Lowell coming back in, I think, cemented it for people. So I think it's kind of now, it's people are gauging what is the bigger problem right now. Is Rodgers the bigger problem with the board? But they're still both a problem that need to be dealt with. Do you know what I mean? Like, if Rodgers goes, the board, still needs to be dealt with. I think, again, I'll go back to it. He brings off Mikey Johnson and he brings off Turnbull. I think for the rest of them, they've seen he's done it again. He's thrown them under the bus again. I mean, how many times he brought Turnbull off at half time? That might be the third. I'm not sure. So it's kind of, he keeps on doing this, and it feels like a roulette of who's going to be thrown under the bus, and where all the stuff from Mikey Johnson, last chance, and all this sort of thing. And he's back in there despite being average at best. No, I didn't. I've got to be honest. I saw the changes and I was like, no, I don't. Too little, too late. He should have been starting with O and Kyogo if that's what he wanted to do. If he thought that they needed that help, like we said, left back, wasn't as big a problem as it has been really. But that's generally because everyone was so poor. I had zero confidence that we were getting a goal, let alone the goals that we needed. I mean, genuinely, someone said on the group chat, they said, hearts or evens to win this game. And I'm not joking, I was close to putting money on that because I was like, evens, they're 2-0 up the way that we've been playing, and they're evens. That seemed to me like free money. And I wish I had. I wish I'd put the house on it because, no confidence. And again, that's the thing. I think, under previous managers, we thought to ourselves, right, we'll come out the second half and we've got a chance. Even though it's 2 goals, we've got a chance. I don't think there was a lot of belief about it. And I think you saw that reflected in, I know we might come on to talk about it, the kind of the issues in the stands and the people getting removed and stuff like that. And, I think a lot of people need to wake up. I mean, if that board is sitting there after that game and not realizing that there's a rot that has really, really set in and they're not acting to stop that rot. Some people say it's the Green Brigade. I think that's one issue. Some people say it's the signings. I think that's one issue. Manager, maybe the biggest issue. Them, which they won't see at all, by the way. Let's not kid ourselves. It'll be nothing to do with them. So yes, all sorts of stuff going on. But no confidence at the beginning of the second half. And the longer it went on, the more laughable it became. Kyogo missing that chance, right at the beginning, was like, of course. Mm. And I think Maeda missed one right, that was in the goal line as well. That's what it is.
But Ali Johnson off for the Bricky as well. Again, I don't know if he was injured, but I didn't understand that. And then and Bernabe on for Palma, which at least Bernabe's got a left foot, and his first three or four touches made sense. But then 10 minutes later, taking Taylor off and putting Bernabe back to left back what was that all about? I genuinely have no idea. Crazy.
Yeah. And everyone said, Bernabe's got to be an upgrade in Taylor, right? And then you're watching Bernabe going, oh my God, no. And then you're like, well, where's Frame? What has Frame done that he can't get in ahead of these two? It's like, unbelievable.
Yeah.
There seems to be a kind of like almost inevitability of taking the wrong decision almost at every opportunity and to kind of work ourselves out. So we're now seeing lots of chat of Lennon and 2021 season. Is it warranted? I mean, is it got to that stage, folks? Is that where we're at? I mean, forget about Santa, right? Let's just say that was just... But, I mean, I certainly could, again, I'm watching it in Malaysia, I'm watching on TV, I'm on my own, it's 11 o'clock at night, whatever. But I could sense the atmosphere of that game, and maybe I'm seeing comments now kind of telling me I was right, that the atmosphere is now kind of toxic a little bit.
You can feel it, David. You can feel it. This is the thing, you can feel it. I know people are like, I said it a couple of weeks ago, I said it's beginning to feel like the Lennon season. And now it really does feel like the Lennon season because it's not just the manager. There's all the factors, the discontent, and the writing is on the wall because to bring it back from where it is going to need to take a quick decision, and a quick decision that turns out to be the right decision. And that was like it was under Lennon. They needed to take the quick decision. Lennon said that if it got bad, he would leave. He didn't end up doing that. The board wanted to show him loyalty. There's, some people will defend that. I can see the sentiment. But the problem was we left it way too late to make any decision to affect the rest of the season. And it's getting to that stage now. The feeling is there, and it's going to... I mean, I don't know what the other guys think. It's going to take a lot to even get us back on side as a fan base with a lot of things. And there's a lot of heavy lifting to be done, and we're not even at Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean,
nice. You want to take that one? Off you go, Daniel. You're going off to Chicago. You can hide for a while. Come on, take this one.
Well, I'm actually going to be talking to the Texas CSC.
Oh, you are. The tech you are doing Lone Star, right? Yeah.
Man, I'm always doing exercise, lifting my weights, man. Yeah, something needs to happen. Either the team needs to snap right into form, doubtful, or something drastic needs to happen. I mean, we go down to those guys across town at home on the 30th. There's going to be big problems, and they're going to absolutely have to do something. The thing about Rodgers coming back, and I can't get this out of my head. Have you ever gotten back with a girlfriend or something that you broke up with after dating for a long time, and you think it's going to work, and it never fucking does? It never does. Same stuff just comes up. You break up, whatever. It's almost worse than the first time you broke up. That's what this feels like right now, man. That's definitely what it feels like.
Dan, it's a good point, right? Because I think you remember when Rodgers came back in, he was quite sheepish, right? He didn't sort of overplay himself. He held back from a lot of commentary. He was accepting of criticism. I think it was the Green Brigade who booed him. I can't remember if it was necessarily them, but in one game,
right.
He was kind of.
Who else would it have been? It was a guy in 462F or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like
right. when they were still alive.
Yeah.
So there was something about his approach which would have made him perhaps uncomfortable, not confident, and perhaps he's gone on the cycle of trying to figure out who does he please? Does he please? Because when he went to the AGM, for example, all reports said he did a really good job and was fully aligned to the board in terms of his commentary and what he was saying. We've heard him say he's fully involved in team selection and these players. And then, early days he said, "I just do the best with what is brought to me." And then we've seen him increasingly erratic, I would say, about his comments about players and who he throws. I mean, all right, let's just do it. The car crash interview. Let's just get there. Let's forget. We'll come back to the fans' reaction, but let's get to the fact that the car crash. Cherry, he goes off and he says, "It was nothing of the result surprises me." Then what are you for? Have you seen it? Have you managed to? I know you're. I mean,
why would you even bother put a team out on the park? Just take the 3 points, boys. We can't be bothered turning up today. Just take the 3 points, mate. Yeah, we're just going down the pub. Yeah, we're going to the pub. We're going to have a Christmas party.
I mean,
these are the generosity, right?
Yeah.
I get the impression, right? This is an impression. I mean, maybe the wrong impression. Go ahead, Jerry.
No, I was just going to say, for anyone that's ever managed people ever in their life before, I mean, the one thing you don't say to your team is you're all fucking shite, by the way. I mean, it's not the way you're going to get. It's not the way you get a performance out of a team, right? Yeah. It's just not the way you get performance out of a team. And you might tell them that, and you would never even tell them that behind closed doors. But to go and tell third parties in a public forum that you think your team are crap is not the way to get a
not just third parties, by the way, not just third parties, but people are actively going to come up against you now. I bet you Martindale's in there saying, right, these guys are there for the taking. The manager's throwing them under the bus. They get zero confidence if you can get at them. Dundee will be saying the same thing. And like we say, the 30th is a long way away. I mean, like most of us are dreading the 30th already. But I mean, there's two games with highly motivated teams that we look, all at sea. I was like, look. It was a car crash interview, 100%, because you're just you're like, what are you on about? What are you talking about? Why are you saying these things? If you're trying to make a point that's going to get lost, all you're doing is digging that hole deeper and deeper and deeper. I've heard and I've seen some people say he looks like he's trying to get the sack again. I don't know. I mean, like that could be one explanation for what can only be described as completely weird behavior. Outside of that, I don't know. It's just it's a madness.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just an opinion, right? Just to kind of throw in and kind of maybe I don't know if this adds any kind of clarity to it, but Rodgers seems to me to be an individual who is an orator. He can actually go out in public. He can inspire. I've heard him do so. He's someone who's focused in his own appearance, right? He kind of likes to look good, trim, teeth, whatever it is. He's thoughtful about who he comes across. This is not someone who doesn't, throws in a jumper and then gets into trouble from his wife because you shouldn't have worn it. It becomes iconic. It's not that kind of. It's two different kind of people we're thinking about here. I cannot understand for the life of me someone of the nature. Again, never met the guy. Don't know. I can go with. I read the tea leaves on this, but he's image conscious. He's not daft. What's going on? Come on, guys, get me out here. What's happened?
I mean, the lack of situational awareness, too. It's not just about what you're saying, but who you're saying it to is incredible. I mean, for him, incredible. So yeah, it's not totally out of line to be thinking, is he trying to get the sack again? Like
I said on last week's show, he will walk into a job in Saudi Arabia if he wanted to. Do you know what I mean? He's not going to be short of options after this, regardless.
He's got the suntan and the teethy, is that what you're saying?
He's got you know what I mean. He's got everything. He's everything going. Don't like, because people are like, oh, you know, if he fails, he is going to be finished. Not at all. He will walk into another job, no bother. So with that in mind, that's another bit of context to this.
Yeah, and it was, you know, again, I mean, whether he wanted Rodgers when he didn't want Rodgers, it was a lazy appointment, effectively, right? The Ange Postecoglou appointment turned out to be an inspired but lucky, I think, appointment. Eddie Howe, if we'd got Eddie Howe, would have been a good appointment, I think. Would we have given him the tools to do a job? Maybe not. You know, he's probably got more capable. But I mean, he's certainly proven in England that he's got capability to be a reasonable manager. I mean, I think Brendan was almost a lazy choice. You know, elite level manager. Yeah, I'm not so sure on what we're seeing now, right? And certainly, you know, talking about him as a narrator and a quality orator. I mean, he doesn't hold a candle to Ange Postecoglou. I mean, Ange Postecoglou, in terms of his ability to go and motivate all of us, right, and the press, and you know, and have them on side, and super smart, super sharp. I mean, they're two different food groups, these guys.
Yeah. Let's not delay on Ange too much, or Gav, who's watching, will get rather upset because we're not allowed to go there. It just bothers him, doesn't it? All right, so folks, I want to do two things before we've got 5 minutes left, right? And I want to end on, again, the reason why we're here. But before we do that, let's just talk about the most important people in the room, and that's the Celtic supporters. We saw a reaction, and it seemed to me to be very organic, natural, and sort of. I didn't come across that it was born out of alcohol, or it was trying to prove a point to anybody else. The guy, when I watched the interaction with the stewards, this guy calmed down very quickly, but he just overboiled. He just came over and started, you know, just pulling out, and that's from a section which we believe are usually more in tune with what's going on behind the board. Have got that all sorted. Who wants to? Ian, go. You're nodding. Tell me what happened there.
I think they'll be patting themselves in the back for banning the Green Brigade, because if the Green Brigade were in there, I think it would be like 10 times worse. So I think they're actually probably saying that, do you know what? If it's only one person standing up having a go, we can write them off as like some sort of like crazy guy for a bit. Like, but they're playing a very dangerous game, because, like you say, usually that's a section that's pretty in tune with the board, and to have that image, I mean, that's the thing that will hopefully have shaken some of them into action. But you kind of leverage that of how you think you would feel, and then you have to remind yourselves about what that board is like. But they must have seen it as where, I know people like make the joke about the sharks and like throwing the metal things and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It genuinely doesn't feel like we're that far away if you're getting people in that section standing up. And bear in mind, them then getting removed. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. When it doesn't even look that bad, the guy's just like voicing his opinion and he's getting like physically removed. And someone's pointing out that Rod Stewart's swanning in, sticking the finger up at fans, and he can go and just take his seat. And someone else is vocally disproving, and then they get removed from the stadium. So again, it's just all, social media. Everything can be picked and contrasted. When we look at like Ukraine, Rainbow Laces, Palestine, where's the difference there? The board's making the distinction, all that sort of thing. I think, in trouble.
You know what it reminded me of? So we've got Matt McGlone is going to come on at some point, and our commitments had prevented him coming on. And I did a wee video for this, so I had to go back and look at Celts for Change again, and it was great going back and reminding myself. Now, it was a very different situation. There was financial troubles. We did not have the governance that, thankfully the board have put in place, and we have that financial control in place. But there was something in one video clip that I found was the board at the time had to run out the stadium. They had to get up from the end of the final whistle. Do you guys remember that? Because I suddenly remembered that I'd forgotten it. Do you remember it? Jerry, do you remember that?
I would have been there. I would have been one of the few that
You
was
would
still. I would have been one of the few that was still going to the games at that point in time, and you know, I mean, remember going to games where there was 13,000, 14,000 people there, and I mean, no one supported the board, obviously, but you know, I don't think we're in the same position we were then, David. I mean, we were
different.
We're about to cease to exist. We were pish. I mean, you know, to put things in, to put a bit of realism, I guess here, you know, we're marginally still top of the league. We're playing like a bunch of clowns. We certainly got some systemic problems in the club today. But my God, we're nowhere near where we were when, you know, God bless Matt and all the boys for Celtic for change that. Because change was absolutely needed. And at that point in time, again, we weren't a publicly listed company then, right? Today we're a publicly listed company. I mean, sack the board. We can say sack the board as much as we want, but I mean, the board ain't going to sack themselves, right? And the shareholders aren't going to sack the board. So it's not, you know, where we had, you know, some shareholders at the point that owned the club that, and the club was bust. You know, and it's like David Murray selling the club for a quid, right? I mean, you know, I'm basically taking on the debt. That's what the club was sold for. So very different times. And while I absolutely agree and concur that you know, we need to go and fix a whole bunch of stuff, you know, board change, I'm not sure is going to. I don't know. I mean, if you run a business and you go and run a club, you know, which is a business, then I'm not sure that, you know, going and sacking half a dozen board members, which is just not going to happen, right? I don't think it's realistic. So, but
at that point, I think that tidies things up, because I think that we have to be realistic right across the way. I think this has been a very helpful session for me anyway, because I've been frustrated since last night. So I think, you know, to end in some sort of sense of calm. Let's see what we do. We're not where we were before, but we know that change needs to come. Let us be the fans through platforms like these, having our say. We thank again Paul John, the Acsom team, for inviting us on to be part of this wonderful charity weekend. Huge kudos to them, the amount of effort that they've made over a weekend to sacrifice their time to run this. I mean, it's hours after hours after hours. But most important of all, is we, Jamie Tierney, if you guys can spare a couple of quid, please do so. If not, understood, just get the word out there. And we hugely appreciate everybody's involvement, and thanks for coming in the comments. There's lots more shows coming after us. Delighted. So I usually am able to press a button here and we magic off, and then we get a song coming on. So I've now got to go and see whether or not I've got to stretch out another 7 minutes or so, and I need Paul John to come and save us all. We've got time, haven't we? We can come up with anything, can we? We can go on.
We can talk for a while, yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Actually, can I just say, I see that we've got one of our regular, Frank Brennan.
Hi, Frank.
Regular listeners on. So, Frank, you didn't see this the last time. And I got a couple of new hats, Frankie. So here's one of them. So hope you like it.
Jerry, if I could get back to your earlier statement about Gav couldn't have picked a worse time to come to Singapore. In my mind, before you told us the story, I thought you were going to bring up something about the weather or something like out with your control, shall we say?
No.
It was just like 12.
See,
12.
But to be honest, by the time he'd arrived, I'd forgot he was even coming. So it wasn't like I was. Just to be clear, I was organising the Christmas event, right, which was organised long before Gav. Was coming. So Gav being here was a bit of an incidental, and my weekend, let's say. So lovely to see him, obviously, but you know. Well, I mean, some of you know. I mean, David knows when you run a supporters club, right? And I think we're at 70 plus members this season. Actually, we just we previewed or started selling the new top for this season. Actually, I was just thinking I'll speak to the guys, but maybe we can. With the Knuckle Draggers game on the 30th, if maybe I'll talk to the committee about maybe seeing any proceeds we get from top sales that day. We might donate to the Jamie Tierney charity, which would be
good man.
Would be a lovely thing to do. So
good looking.
That would be wonderful.
Man. Good looking top.
Oh, it's a beauty. It's a beauty.
Yeah.
Hold on. For those who haven't seen it, it's like the old Bumblebee one with the sing tins. It is a cracker, actually. I mean, I've said I'm in. He got my orders, and as soon as that's in, I'm paying my money.
Yeah.
So if I now
I'm gonna get one too for sure.
If I now know that top is going to be
So
Jamie,
we'll do that.
then
We'll do that
I'm
specifically.
going to buy two immediately. I'm up on the numbers.
Yeah, so we'll do that specifically for the Knuckle Draggers game. Right, we're blessed that the pub put up most of the cash for it. As you know, the proceeds. I mean, all of our profits go to charity. So anyway, I'll speak to the committee. I hadn't really thought about it before I just said that, but I'm sure there'll be we're always looking for additional worthy causes outside of the Celtic Foundation. So I think that would be a nice thing for us to a little contribution, whatever that is. Whatever it is, a few £100 it'll be probably, which helps, right? Every little helps.
Absolutely. Every single little bit helps. Right, so Paul John, I think it's over to you. I think that's the best gesture we could possibly leave you with. I'm going to buy a couple of those tops. If anybody else wants they're absolute belters. It's now you know exactly where it's going for. Pile in. Let's get these tops out there. Paul John, over to you. You take us out whenever you need us, folks. We'll sit here until we're no